Hello, everybody. It is the Dark Conservatarian, and welcome back to Strike Force. And today, on this interview edition of Strike Force, I'm going to be having somebody who I've. Excuse me as I mute my own browser. I have a bad habit of forgetting that shit. But anyway, yes, I am here interviewing somebody who I've had on my channel a few times before on discussion streams and a debate stream against Lapis, which that's sort of, I guess, the base of some of this. But anyway, yes, it is Don of Two Plebs. Introduce yourself, Don.
Hey everybody, I'm Don of the Two Plebs Talk News channel. I hang out and talk to most people about things. We talk about news on a used to be daily basis. Now 4 times a week, I guess. It's good times.
Yeah, work schedule got caught up with you and whatnot. I gotta say, honestly, that's kind of one of the contributing reasons as to why that I slowed down my uploading rate, especially ever since the car crash that I had in early December. But that's a story of its own. And I want to say, before we actually get onto the actual subject, I want to say congratulations on your massive sub boost. By the way,
thank you.
I mean,
it's been a wild ride since like the beginning of the year. I think the channel's about 2.5 times the size it was last November. So,
yep. I mean, you were like 350 or something like that when I had you on for that debate against Lapis, and now you're over 850. You're like reaching up to 900 pretty quickly.
We're at, what, 925 right now, something like that.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, it's been pretty steady growth, like continuously. It's been nice. Speaking of which, since I know a bunch of you are out there, thank you for subscribing. I appreciate it. I know Peter does too, but he's not here.
So anyway, on with the subject. So we're going to be talking about primarily the alt-right here with the Dawn of Two Plebs. Now how this subject got kind of brought up, and also later on in the stream, we're going to probably talk about birthright citizenship and probably other things related to immigration as well. But the reason for how this live stream got brought up, the idea for it, I mean, is that I had asked one of Don's fans if they were alt-right, and a whole conversation ensued. Conversation might be downplaying it a little bit, but some words were exchanged, to say the least, and so I thought the idea of like asking the person who is like who these people follow
runs that little section of the internet.
Yeah, just one little section of the internet. So to clarify, before we actually get into the origins of the alt-right, I mean, clarify your beliefs. Like, what do you define yourself as philosophically, ideologically, and do you share anything with the alt-right, Don?
We all breathe air, so I'll start there. It might be the short list after that. I don't think they and I agree on too horribly much. They do hold some general conservative life principles. When they're running around complaining about degeneracy, some of the things that they say, like maybe you shouldn't run around and constantly do meth and that sort of thing. Or, I mean, the very common sense, good advice stuff they say, I would agree with them on. Anything outside of that, I usually don't. I am small L libertarian. I am not of the Libertarian Party, but small government, fairly conservative lifestyle beliefs, on and on. There was another one in there, and I think I forgot what it was.
Economic liberty, perhaps?
I am minarchist to the point that I am regularly confused with being an anarchist.
Well, aren't we all? Aren't we all? We're all just on one single occasion, like with a social democrat or a socialist or something like that.
Well, they're man are their words to say about that, but that's a bunch of videos to put on my own channel and complain about. So,
So, just a heads up, probably won't keep you on this interview for too long. Go on for like 1 to 2 hours at most. But so one of the main things, like rewinding back to that argument, I'll just put it that way, that ensued on Discord. What I was like saying essentially was somewhat at the core of the alt-right was the belief in a white ethno-state and politicized race realism, which I'm sure that there are like a few other things associated with that, but that was like the very basic bitch stuff that me as an outsider is just knows about them just by looking at people like J.F. Gariepy and Richard Spencer, for example. And I might have been slightly inarticulate with some of the things I said, but
So
yeah.
I think a lot of the problem you run into is JF with that particular argument, because JF is, I'm sure this is going to piss a lot of people off, but he's more alt-right than he is alt-right. He's of the opinion that if you just left people alone, they would self-segregate anyway, so let them. Or at least last I was regularly listening to JF about anything, that was the spiel he was going on. I will grant that it has been a while. But look, don't get me wrong, Richard Spencer is definitely about his ethno-state and that sort of thing. But the reality is, all that the alt-right comes down to, when it's just brass tacks, is there a bunch of socialists that are heavily authoritarian that think the proletariat is white people. That's it. That's all they are.
I never was talking about for a second of what the economic philosophy of the alt-right was, and I even gave the benefit of the doubt that they are economically at least center left. I would not call them far left as a full-blown socialist like Owen McDonald, but that's beside the point.
Well, so sure they are. They, and this is the shtick, right? Where we start having these almost pedantic discussions about it. They want a very heavily, at minimum, controlled market by the government. I mean, they're effectively advocating fascism, which is why they don't mind being called National Socialists, right? Because they are, and socialists economically, or National Socialists economically speaking, are still just socialists. They just have a slightly different take on socialism. And I mean, I know that no socialist would approve of that descriptor, but it's true. And
I would say
it's very much the. Go ahead, man.
I would say that there are varying degrees of socialism. Like, for example, I would say that social democracy, even though it has little sprinklings of capitalism, it's still, I would say, overall leans more towards socialism than actual capitalism. But
are you talking to people that call themselves social democrat?
Yeah, that's what I mean by social democracy, is the philosophy that those people abide by, the Bernie Sanders of the world and so on and so forth. But what I mean primarily, sorry, you go on, and then I'll make my remark.
So all of those people are just socialists too. They just tend to decide that they want socialism to stop at some point, right? So nationalize all kinds of stuff because I decided it was a good idea, but don't nationalize like 3 or 4 things, and then it's not socialism. Like, well, okay, but I mean, you're effectively back to fascism again, and now we're just talking about yet another brand of socialism.
Yep. Now, I don't think quite everybody knows that we're alive or something.
Could be,
but I don't know. That doesn't matter. If we have a peaceful chat, we have a peaceful chat. Well, I mean, by chat, I mean like live chat. Of course, one-on-one exchange between us, I'm sure, far sure, is going to be fairly peaceful because we don't hardly disagree on much, in my observation of things.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't tend to yell at people for the most part. So, I mean, I'll yell abstractly, but I don't tend to yell at people.
I mean, both you and I are somewhere in between center and far right. We're kind of somewhat more leaning towards the Republicans and Democrats, generally speaking, at least. And
it's not unfair.
Okay. But what I was meaning earlier on saying that alt-right is like not full-blown socialists, like they don't, at least they don't espouse that they advocate for seizing the means of production from the business owner completely and giving it to the people. They just believe that it should be somewhat curtailed away from the business owner and then given somewhat into control of the workers via government control.
So
is what I was saying.
Are we arguing that what the National Socialists want to do, the fascist per se, is to impose heavy regulation and or partial control at a governmental level on business and use that as a nationalizing of the people kind of mythology or methodology.
Well, they're controlling it through the government, I would say.
This is the original prescription of fascism. Like, I mean, at least here they are. I don't know that they would necessarily enjoy the term fascist, or that I continuously say it's just economically a different method of implementing socialism. But all of these things are true. I mean, go read Mussolini. When he talks about fascism, he's talking about what the alt-right is espousing, and the reason he's espousing it is because international socialism had failed, so we needed a different brand of socialism. I mean, they're just socialists, man.
They're just straight up socialists. I mean, what would you say in response to somebody like somebody further to the left of even alt-righters that would say they sold, like they monopolized or nationalized all the industry, like in, say, Nazi Germany, for example, but then they sold the monopolies to private individuals so they could be privately owned?
I would say that Lenin did the same thing.
Lenin, oh.
I
mean, I thought that kind of came further along in Russian history. Like, it wasn't quite Lenin, but I thought it was like further along in Russian history of when that actually happened. But that's my mistake right there.
I mean, look, there's the various parallels here are not small, right? I mean, they want the same things. They don't trust people or the market. Freedom is not a consideration. The only thing that even comes up as freedom. I mean, look, they're out there advocating for socialized medicine in the same pretense as Bernie, right? I mean, and their argument is it would work if we were a homogenized white society. So, you know, I mean, they're making all the same policy desires, except instead of when you get to like Bernie or Kamala Harris and they're like, oh, it should be black people that get stuff, they just say it should be white people that get stuff. I mean, in all reality, they're almost a logical response to people like Kamala Harris or what is that idiot Sean King or the other moron Tariq Nasheed, right? I mean, they're all saying the same thing. They all just pick different horses.
Sorry, I'm sharing around the link as I'm trying to listen
No
at the
worries,
same
man.
time. So what would you because I knew about the extent of what Richard Spencer's beliefs were, that like he advocates for a living wage, quote unquote, and single payer. And what I generally hear, I mean, I haven't heard specifically from his own words, that he is a pro-choicer when it comes to abortion as well. So maybe that'll be another topic to talk about in this.
I don't know. I don't know that there is necessarily an alt-right position on abortion.
No,
I don't know that it like. I am certain you would find people in the alt-right who had various specific and stringent beliefs about it, but I mean that tends to be true everywhere. So, and under the circumstance, I mean, considering what stats are on abortion right now, they're probably for it. So.
I said that Richard Spencer was pro-choice, not pro-life. I mean,
right. Like I said, I'm sure they have varying stringent beliefs on the subject, but I don't think it's core to the platform in any way.
I got a question. I mean, from your observation, is no bullshit? I mean, this is just out of curiosity. Is no bullshit actually alt-right? Like,
I have no idea. I tried when he was involved in some drama with somebody to watch a couple of his videos, and I was like, wow, this guy's an idiot. I can't do this.
He seems at least alt-light. I mean, especially when he keeps on crying about my white identity and so on and so forth. Like that was what he was constantly crying about in the video of his that I responded to, where he was thinking that anti-whiteness was becoming a huge problem. When I was thinking to myself, I mean, there are an increasing amount of people who are like saying that being white is bad and so on and so forth. And they aren't words that should be unchallenged, granted, but until white people are actually being systematically killed, I doubt the whole white genocide narrative. Go on.
Let's leave the white genocide narrative to the side for a minute, because it's not what anybody makes it out to be. But for a moment here, let's consider the parties that I have said are similar to the alt-right. One of them is running for president. Well, two of them are running for president of the United States. Can you imagine what would happen if Richard Spencer ran for president of the United States? Now, it doesn't even matter if anyone gave him their blessing. Just if he showed up one day and went, I'm going to be president of the United States, the entire world would melt down, right? Oh my God, Richard Spencer is running for president of the United States. However, when the former president of the United States gets up and says it's racism if black children get punished in schools more than white children, and so I'm going to write an executive order that says the only way possible that the children would be disciplined at disproportionate rates is if it is racism. Therefore, schools, you are not allowed to punish children racially at disproportionate rates. We all just shrug and move on. And if you don't think that's true, that is still an executive order on the books right now.
Well, it sounds like that you're basically saying they're applying affirmative action when it comes to disciplining children in schools.
You're right. They are. What is affirmative action? Let's do this. Let's put this the other way. If we went out, and by the way, what's the alt-right advocating? White people need to get jobs. White people need to be the ones out front. When that gets said, it's, oh my God, the world is melting down because the alt-right said white people need a thing. On the other hand, affirmative action when it's black people or Mexicans or gay people or transgender or whatever. Oh yeah. I guess we could talk about that. There is a real discussion to be had about how it is okay to hate white people and it is not okay to hate anyone else. On the other hand, I don't know if that equates to white genocide.
Yeah, I mean, okay, that was the point that I was going to get to, because I disagree with affirmative action, be it with the punishing children or with employment or whatever else have you. I disagree with it as much as you, but at the same time, to define that as white genocide seems a little bit hyperbolic, in my opinion.
Well, and to be fair, that's not the argument that they make for white genocide. But regardless, my point here is that societally, we are accepting of that, right? We are accepting of going to the populace and going, well, we should hire black people outside of merit because fuck white people. I mean, that's...
I mean,
it's what we have put that, we put that on the books. We left that there. It's been there for, at this point, about 50 years.
Further on the issue of white genocide, one thing that alt-righters or alt-lighters, I guess, would point out as a piece of evidence of white genocide is that you have more characters in movies being like minority characters or non-whites in general, like Star Wars Episode 7, for example, which TJ Kirk actually made a video on that, and obviously don't agree with TJ on not near everything, but I agreed with him on that video, talking about how people are being petty, crying about, oh, there's a black main character in Star Wars 7, but that's well, I mean, what do you think? What do you think of things like that, of more movies becoming more diverse or whatever?
Was Gamergate petty? I noticed when it was their medium of choice, this wasn't being petty. This was stop trying to inject your social justice bullshit into my favorite medium. And as soon as it's somebody else's medium, they're not conservative about it. They don't care. Shut up. Everyone's being petty.
I mean, social justice. I mean, what if they just want one minority character just for the heck of it, not necessarily to spread a message? I mean, I guess you'll have to like dig deeper and see like in the interviews of the directors or the producers, why did they put a minority character?
You don't have to dig at all. The week after Star Wars Episode 7 was released, the director of Episode 7 came out and said, yes, we wanted a strong female lead character. Yes, we wanted a black stormtrooper. Yes, we wanted more minorities for social justice reasons. You don't have to dig it all.
Oh, the Mary Sue Ray thing, that was obvious from the get-go, because obviously they made her character a little bit too strong. I mean, I guess another thing that would kind of imply to me is that it's a whole social justice narrative, is that they're trying to like make their social justice characters like look overly powerful or whatever, or look too good that it's just freaking unrealistic. Right. With the case of Finn, that wasn't really the case in either 7 or 8.
I don't know that I saw 8. Truth be told, I am pulling back from television pretty hard because I hate social justice. However, back to our alt-right point here, right? So keep in mind, they really are just the social justice socialist left, but for white people. So for all the Anita Sarkeesians out there going, there need to be more women in movies, otherwise we're marginalizing minorities. All the alt-right is doing is going, well, there need to be more white people in movies, or we're marginalizing white people. They are mirror images of each other, all right?
All right. I mean, I would say in response to both of them, hey, you're both being petty, shut up, and let me enjoy my damn movie.
Well, and be that as it may, but at least to the point of who even could have a point here, the alt-right is correct. We are intentionally erasing white people in a sense, right? I mean, what ridiculousness would it
Who's
be?
We?
Well, society, right? What ridiculousness would it be if I said we should make a new Shaft and Shaft should be white?
A new Shaft. What's that again? Is it okay? I don't think I've seen what media you're referring to. Shaft.
So it was a blaxploitation film is what they would call it, right? It was a 70s black action show, right? And Shaft was the main character, and he was black, and it was a big deal that he was black, and all this other kind of shit. Or if we made the new Lethal Weapon, and instead of a black guy, it was a white guy, right? Or pick your any particular moment. Let's say we made a movie about MLK and the guy playing MLK was white. Is that going to fly?
Nope.
But when we start talking about let's make, and I know MLK is slightly different because he was a real person and all, but even then they don't seem to mind, right? There's plenty of discussions about, well, when playing a real person, why can't it just be a black person, right? Plenty of articles out there for it. And the flip side of that is, well, let's make James Bond black. Right? You know, he was conveniently white for the past 70 years, but you know what? Turns out he might have been black.
Well, to the credit, the geographics of the character would not shift that much if they were to just change his skin tone that much. I mean, unless if they were to like make James Bond take place in, say, the freaking 50s or something. Well, I don't know.
South Africa, Niger, I don't know. But look, it doesn't really matter. If any of this was going the other way, society would lose its mind, right? And in the world of the alt-right occasionally has a point. They do have a point here. We would never tolerate this going the other direction. Again, I don't know if that qualifies as white genocide.
Well, yeah, I don't think that is a real issue that the more centrist people are having. I think the issue that they're having is that they're taking it a step too far. I mean, obviously the shoehorning of political agendas in general, but I mean, I guess I do not see the issue with Finn itself in Star Wars 7. Like, if there was like an explanation, or I don't know. I'm trying to go on that point.
There's a group of movies which are demonstrating the Black Panthers, right? For whatever reason, the hypothetical group of movies that is about the Black Panthers. And
now we're not talking about MCU here, by the way, people.
No, 1970 Black Panthers, right? And we're going to make it show that the Black Panthers were great people, so that we can get that political agenda in, and that's fine. But what we're going to do is affirmative action a white guy into the Black Panthers. And that's fine, right?
both the okay, I would have a problem with the former that you said right there, but the latter right there would obviously be incorrect for the agenda that the Black Panthers actually stand for. You know, I mean, so yeah. So
and look, the stormtroopers are based are a direct rip of the Nazis, and this goes right on back to like Battlefield 5 with black Nazi women, right? I mean, and on and on. Look, this agenda is getting pushed. My answer to this is if you don't like it, don't watch it. Therefore, I don't watch it. But they're not wrong in saying that it's getting pushed, right?
I definitely have an issue if people are going to like do historical revisionism, but that's everybody. That's not just the alt-right though. I mean, I guess what people were some of the stuff that TJ was pointing out in complaint of Finn being added as a black character in Star Wars 7 is that people were all like, I will not have anybody to represent me, or I will have less people to represent me, which was kind of dumb because then you have like this big walking carpet in the original trilogy.
Right. And look,
who doesn't represent anyone in real life?
A lot of this seems stupid and full of pedantry, and I'm okay with that being a criticism of the argument. And yet, at the same time, flick on any, I don't know, popular television show, specifically any popular cop action show, right? And within any single episode, you will see a 90-pound woman throw around a 300-pound guy, right? And you have an even better chance of this happening if it's a 90-pound black woman throwing around a 300-pound white guy. Look, physics says none of this is possible, and it's stupid, which is my original problem.
I think Steven Crowder actually did a review on that movie that you're talking about.
He did, right? And so,
I don't remember the name of the movie, but I know what you're talking about.
Atomic Blonde, I think, is what he was talking about.
Oh, yeah. Now that you mention it, yeah.
But, I mean, all of these things are in there, right? And it's all of this stupid progressive agenda narrative garbage. And so in a shocking turn of events, nobody likes that. They just want to see a movie that, all right, maybe I'll suspend my disbelief some, but at a certain point we've gone too far and you're injecting politics in this that I don't like anyway, and on and on and on and on. And the problem is, even in the places where I consistently, when I point it out and I go, that's what's happening there, at least in my personal opinion, right? What I get told is, no, it isn't. And then 2 weeks later, the director releases an interview and goes, well, yes, it is. Right. Mm-hmm. And so in this sense, they're not wrong. And if we, for any reason, tolerate the idea that this is a good thing to be happening, which, don't get me wrong, in small ways, people push back. You know, Ghostbusters was a disaster. Mm-hmm. But in small ways, we tolerate it all the time, right? Some of the most popular shows on TV are full of this nonsense on a regular basis. Well, as long as this is a thing to argue for, then why are we even surprised that a white person showed up and went, well, this is what we're arguing about now, so I'm going to argue for white people?
I think the ultimate thing regarding cinema is that people will not care of what's going on behind the scenes if it's kept behind the scenes and not put out on the screen as well. I mean, for example, you have Star Wars 7 of where that behind the scenes people were all like, I want to shoehorn a certain agenda, and they make it obvious with Rey being able to do a Jedi mind trick despite her not ever being taught that. So strong female character. But take, for example, the newest Mad Max Fury Road. Like, they don't make the agenda so freaking obvious, yet looking behind the scenes, they did have like a third wave feminist co-writer or something in the movie, but people still like it. Even people who are like anti-fems or just, if you want to use the term anti-SJWs like you and me, are still able to enjoy that movie because they don't make it freaking obvious.
Well, don't speak too soon. This is why I've stopped watching television, all right? Because it's really becoming a problem. Even shows I used to like, I'm like, hell with it. I'll go back and watch that. And I go back and watch them, and I'm like, all right, enough's enough. Fuck.
It is.
Like, I'm starting to feel like that meme about Lacey Green when she put out that thing. It was like, I just turn off my feminist lens every now and again. I'm like, yeah, That's almost starting to become me. It's almost a reasonable criticism.
I guess
On the
it
other
is.
hand, I'm just tired of this crap.
I guess ultimately it is becoming a bit of a problem in that our favorite medias are being ruined and whatnot.
Right.
But the media being ruined is like a particularly first world problem, I say.
Sure it is. And look, you're not wrong. I mean, it is entirely a first world problem. When you back to the alt-right as opposed to just media criticism. But if you want to talk about white genocide, what they're generally talking about when they say that, and it's hyperbolic, is birth rates is what it comes down to, right? The white Western world is not breeding at replacement rates, and they are absolutely terrified that means there's going to be no white people in 50 years or whatever. Okay, I mean, if that's where you want to spend all your worry, go right ahead. But look, people choosing not to have kids, have at it. I mean, you do you. I don't know what the answer to that is, other than like literally the Hitler breeding camps, and I don't think that's a great plan either. But this is what they're talking about when they talk white genocide. That and cops kill more white people than black people every year. There isn't exactly a White Lives Matter out there complaining about it, right?
Well, if you take into account like innocent, non-violent whites versus blacks, I mean, it becomes sort of skewed. Like there was the John Jay University study that I remember Ben Shapiro citing at one point, where it's like a 1.5 times or something like that more for white people than black people. And if you'll take the raw numbers of how many are shot per year, like white people in raw numbers, white people are shot more than black people, but breaking it down by percentages and realizing of how much considerably smaller the black population in America is, it becomes they become overrepresented in how many people are shot by cops, black people versus white people, I mean. But also, if you take into account of how many homicides are committed by each group, black people are also represented in how many homicides they commit versus white people. So you go thinking, maybe some of these shootings are caused because of violent crime. I don't know.
So here's the shtick, right? Again, in a lot of ways, the alt-right has a bunch of things, a bunch of very small things, right, that they explode into overly hyperbolic things. But before we criticize them too much for that, that's also just our political landscape right now. So, there's that. But to the point here, you have to go through that big, giant set of hoops before it's just okay to say more white people are killed by cops than black people. Right? And here's the reality. The vast majority of white people on this planet are like, well, I mean, I have to do that because something white guilt is what it comes down to. And if I share anything with the alt-right, it's that I don't have white guilt. So, I mean,
you don't have to be
anyone. So, ta-da!
Yeah,
I'll say what.
Give the cracker a cookie,
right? And that's another thing, right? So, let's say for a moment that Sargon was on some stream that didn't matter, and he said, and he was talking to a bunch of black nationalists, and he said, "You're acting like a bunch of black crackers." Does anyone care?
I think I do remember that.
Does anyone care if he says this? No.
Not that I can recall. I don't think there was, or I don't know. I haven't paid much attention, but maybe it's because nobody cared. I wasn't able to hear much of it.
So, to the best of my knowledge, this never happened, right? But let's presume that it did for a moment. No one cares.
Okay. I thought you were speaking unironically for a second there.
No, I mean, hypothetically, but unironically, no one would care if this happened, right? If Sargon went over, only because he's a big name and did the inverse, right? But if he goes on some stream of black nationalists and he's talking to them, and he says to the chat, "You're acting like a bunch of black crackers," no one cares, or black white bread, or whatever it is. He can say whatever he wants because he's talking about white people, and no one gives a damn, right?
Right.
So, I mean, look, in this sense, again, they're not wrong, and I don't think the answer to that is to be alt-right, but I think it is to quit being guilty. So, or
Yeah.
feeling ashamed for any particular reason, or and look, don't get me wrong, people like Twitter don't make it easy. You know, God forbid you quote FBI stats, they'll ban you immediately.
I might have heard about that, but I don't know.
That did happen.
Excuse me. I mean, what would you define of, like, say, if white people were to just naturally become excuse me. What would you say of the possibility of white people would just naturally become a minority of a given country?
So I mean that's already true in a couple, and the argument is that it will be in the U.S. I am absolutely apathetic to the idea that white people become a minority in the U.S. They're,
Okay.
I mean,
I am
whatever.
too, but alt-righters will complain about that mere fact.
Well, so this is
How dare more darkies immigrate into the US or something like that? How
well,
dare a white guy
again,
be dating a black girl?
understand what's going on here, right? So, according to our crazy nutbar far left group of the world, if you are a minority, bad things happen to you, right? I mean, it's just presumably the way it is, according to, well, all of them, right? Minorities are oppressed. Well, if you believe the same thing that the crazy nutbar left does, but about white people, that if white people are a minority, they are oppressed, right? And so when I say they're just a mirror image of each other, they really just are. And that's, I mean,
But I
it's
mean,
just how it is.
nobody's denying that, really.
And equally speaking, the alt right are attached to the bell curve like nobody's business, right? And the idea that your IQ is perpetually tied to your race. So, and
Okay, so I got somebody asking questions. That's what I'm trying to revert my attention to as
yeah,
at the
no,
same
I
time.
got you. I got the chat up, but yeah, I figured I'd just cover for you while you were typing. Anyway, they're attached to this, and this the premise of this is if we let more minorities in, then they will A, lower the average IQ of the country, B, create all this crime because somehow they're genetically predisposed to it, and on and on and on and on. And that, I mean, there is simply no way to look at immigration history in the U.S. and find that to be true. But they enjoy it. And it's part of their shtick because the white people are the proletariat for them. So, I mean, a lot of what everybody concentrates on with the alt-right isn't the danger, in my opinion, right? Like, white nationalism is just the worst thing that ever could be as far as society is concerned. And look, one, it's unpopular, so it doesn't matter, right? There will not be a time when the U.S. suddenly goes, you know what? Good point. We're a white nationalist country. That's it's not going to happen. If it ever was going to happen, we're too far away, right? And more importantly, on a policy level, they're advocating the same things as everyone on the left. So,
I mean, whereas the SJWs, the alleged SJWs, they would be advocating for like forced diversity, whereas the alt-right would be advocating for forced racial monogamy. Would that be the right word?
I get what you're going for there. So, the alt-right is a minority. The only reason they got attention was because of Hillary. Yeah, basically. I mean, you're pretty on point there, Chad. Anyway, so is that true, though? Like, the crazy SJW left advocates for forced diversity right up until they think they have enough minorities, and then they agitate for segregation, right? And we're seeing this happen in colleges right now.
Well, right, yeah, I hear those stories as well, plenty.
And so, look, what the people who are more honest that are doing all the same things are just going, no, we just need a black nation, right? And there was a very brief period in time where Black Lives Matter still held some societal sway, and the alt-right was in the news on a regular basis. And the two of them were literally arguing the same thing with slightly different geographic lines drawn. We need to break this country into two countries. There needs to be a white country and a black country. And both of them were saying the exact same thing, had just drawn the maps ever so slightly different.
Right. It almost seems that pretty much Black Lives Matter has become pretty irrelevant, and arguably so has the alt-right to an extent, except for the individuals that they be selecting to go on harassment or dox campaigns or whatever.
Well, the alt-right was always irrelevant, right? And to some degree, so is Black Lives Matter. We just whatever we put an MSNBC camera in front of, we decide is important, right? Mm-hmm. Neither one was some vast majority of the country, no matter how often we tried to play up both of them. They never held any power, and they didn't matter. Other than, to be fair, Barack Obama really loved Black Lives Matter and had them in the White House all the time. Other than that.
Right. I wasn't trying to say that they were a vast majority, although I would argue that there were more people that were favorable of Black Lives Matter than there were of anyone at any point that were favorable towards the alt-right. Like the BLM in their entire history, they were able to get more favorability as compared to the alt-right.
So understand that that's a little bit of the media game, right? I mean, who in the mainstream is pointing a camera at Richard Spencer and going, you have some really great ideas that we should use to change this country. On the other hand, they're doing that to the whoever it is that's a face in Black Lives Matter, right?
Right.
So, look, a little bit of this is just the media game. So, that aside, though, I mean, neither one of them held some, massive sway that we needed to worry about. It's just politically feasible or politically capitalistic to say that they do, right? I mean, I can't imagine how many people are running around right now screaming about how the alt-right is soon going to do something, right? And that guy that just got caught in the Coast Guard or whatever it was, that they've decided his big deal was that he was a white nationalist, even though he wanted to kill everybody on Earth.
I mean, what are you, fucking Dr. Evil or something?
Seriously, if you read the very few things that are out about the guy, he really is. He's just an idiot, right? But, oh my God, see, there was someone who was a white nationalist and he wanted to kill people, so the world is over.
Anecdotes, yeah.
Well, so it's not just that, but I mean, when the Black Lives Matter guys killed all those Dallas cops, was the world over? Yeah.
No, not really. It was the end of those family members' worlds.
Yeah, I bet it was. And
the family,
wrong,
yeah,
horrible tragedy, and probably shouldn't make light of it. On the other hand, if there's going to be a world-ending scenario, I fail at making a plan to kill the entire world versus I actually killed people. One of these should take some precedence,
Yeah. So rewinding the conversation a bit, you mentioned, some comment about white genocide and saying that it ain't really what it's put out to be or something like that. So I was wondering of what your thoughts on that. Like the alt-right are not accurately defining of what white genocide. Just go on.
So this is like every other policy, right? And I will use their mirror as a helpful anagram here, right? So Black Lives Matter starts out, cops are killing all of the black people and the world is ending. And then from there, it's, I mean, yeah, that's still a problem. And, but what would make this just a little bit better is if more black people got Oscars. What? And yet they jumped on Oscars so white like that, right? Because, okay, we have this big thing. White people are going to die out for the alt-right, right? The birth replacement rates are too low and they're dying all over the world. And there's all of this crime that's killing white people. And so there's going to be no more white people. It's a genocide. We're going to kill all the white people. This is their argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know what would help with that is if we stopped replacing white people with black people in movies. What?
Yeah, thus rewinding us all the way back to Star Wars 7, the
Right?
Star Wars 7 example that I brought up.
They are just, I mean, it's the same shtick, just in with a different proletariat, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, and look, both of them do have another thing that they absolutely love, which is their raw authoritarianism, right? I mean, both of them are perfectly happy to compel all the white people to do whatever they want right at the moment, or all of the black people to get the hell out of America so it can be a white person's Israel, or whatever the hell they're, however they decided they want their white ethno state. It's and you must be compelled to live however it is that they want you to live, and on it goes, right? I mean, they're really just mirror images of each other.
Yeah. Take a shot for whenever Dawn says they're mirror images of each other.
If you watch the stream from the beginning
joking.
and do that, you may be dead. Because they are. The only thing that I have to say about it is that both are like on a personal note, is that they're both terrible, and the biggest problem is that we don't treat them like they're both terrible, right? There is no section of the internet or the world at large that is running around screaming down with, right, and then whatever leftist social justice agenda you want to go with, or black nationalism or anything like that, right? Like, think of the Covington kid standing there in front of all of those black nationalist friggin' crazy people. We didn't turn
You're
around
talking about the Hebrew Israelites.
Yeah, we didn't turn around and then crucify those people. We just ignored them.
Pretty much. I mean, I haven't actually researched much about it. Like,
Well,
I
people don't like them. I'll grant you that. But no one is putting them on TV and going, look at this horrible problem, right?
I mean, I did read a story, however, from the Washington Examiner that Washington Post is getting sued $250 million for defamation and whatnot.
That is correct, and I am enjoying every minute of it.
Yeah. So,
I am dying for them to lose that suit. That would.
Oh yes.
No.
Okay, so so talking again about the alt-right's actual core beliefs. I mean, when I brought up on Discord there of how it's somewhat at the core of their beliefs was believing in a white ethno state and politicized race realism. I guess one could say that what really comes to the actual root of those beliefs is the belief in white identity. I mean, what would you say that that's accurate?
Personally, I look at them the same way that I do their image, right? Their mirror is. It's a good vehicle to accomplish what they're actually after, which is the amalgamation of power, right? And so, in their opinion, if they could just get white people all on board with the idea that white people have problems, then white people would vote them into power. And then
white identity
to do things, right? And so, for the same reason that everyone points out to all of the black nationalists, however, milquetoast they are on the subject, like, well, you never don't actually care about black people, because if Black Lives mattered to you, you would go to Chicago and do something about the gun violence, right? It's the same thing with the alt-right. It's their vehicle. I don't think they care. And I'm sure, much like with the Black Lives Matter portion of it, it's mostly the leadership that this applies to. And I am certain that there are plenty of followers who actually care about their white identity. And to some degree, I would say that each of them have their priests, as it were, that run around going, oh, being black or being white is a very important thing. And we actually, they give the sermon, right? And they are believers. But on a vast majority level, these people are in search of power, just like everybody else.
Right. I mean, that seems to obviously be the case with Richard Spencer, with the way that he was with what he was saying, I mean, in his debate against Sargon over a year ago.
Yeah. Well,
almost a year ago. Well, actually, no, it was over a year ago because it was what, 2017, like November or something like that.
I don't know, but it's been a while.
Yes, it feels ancient at this point.
Right. Oh, and so the question always would differentiate immediately. You know, pick your particular favorite chosen race. So for the alt-right, white people. If you had to kill 1 million white people, but tomorrow you could have a white ethno-state, would you do it? And if the answer is yes, they don't care about white people.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I mean, they care about the power, the, you know, having their ethno-state that presumably they are in control of. It's not any different. It's just a different proletariat.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, there is something that I am curious about. You mentioned about JF Garipy of how he is just an alt-light, but thing is, I did actually hear him in a debate, basically advocate for a white ethno-state of sorts. Anyways,
How's that? Presuming that I didn't watch it because I probably didn't. But what did he say?
I cannot remember. I cannot quote exactly word for word what he said, but at one point he made the snide remark of, okay, this is me roughly remembering one thing that he at least said. He made the snide remark of, I am sorry, black people, for the way that white people have treated you. I mean, it was obviously a fake apology. And he said, I want to separate white people so that they don't, from black people so that they don't make you suffer anymore, or something like to that extent.
Okay.
I'll have to link it to you, although
Yeah.
it'll probably be painful for you to watch because of
his
particular. Well, I wasn't gonna just say because of JF, but because of one other particular person that is involved in that stream.
Well, speaking of people that think the alt-right is a big problem, but anyway, so back when JF first started to become a thing, I watched a bunch of his content, and his argument at the time was that we would self-segregate and that would be better anyway. And so maybe he's changed his mind there, but again, I come to a problem where I run out of fucks to give with people that don't matter, right? And ideas that don't matter because no one cares about them. So, okay, there are, what do you want to say, 500,000 people worldwide? I mean, 100,000, 50? What
actually believe in the that actually are alt-right?
Yeah. I mean, what number are we looking at here, right? But whatever it is,
it's probably low,
right? And it's not enough people to take one House seat in the United States. Oh no! Like, it is the ultimate mountain out of a molehill situation. So I don't know. I may be missing how they are suddenly, despite not having any members and not being able to change anything or really do anything, a giant problem. But if I am, it only comes down to, but we hate the idea of white nationalism more than we hate anything else. Okay, well, our personal preference not to have white nationalism will pretty well guarantee we don't have white nationalism. So this isn't a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I don't go day in and out talking about the alt-right, but if they come up in conversation or something like that, or I'll espouse my disagreements, obviously, but I'm not they're not a huge boogeyman to me. Kind of to a certain extent in the same way of, well, I don't know. Would you say that SJWs like intersectional feminists and third wave feminists, the Anita Sarkeesian types out there and whatnot, would you say that they are like more in numbers and thus are a little bit more of a problem than the alt-right?
Yeah. And I think the problem is that people are more passively on their side than they are the alt-right. Like they are tolerable
That's a fair
of
point.
things, right? So when Anita Sarkeesian goes to the UN and says whatever the hell she said there, or when Emma Watson gets up and starts a he for she campaign, dear men, become servile to women across the globe. Imagine that getting said in the inverse, right? Or imagine the alt-right trying to make this. Dear everyone, everyone else for whites, people of color for white people, the campaign. Yeah, that's going to go over like a ton of bricks covered in shit. Like, you know. But when Emma Watson gets up and does it, it's,
yeah.
Well, I don't know if I agree with you, but I guess we can tolerate that happened.
That kind of reminds me of the debate that roaming millennial, or at least Theron Meyer's description of the interview that roaming millennial had with Richard Spencer, of where roaming millennial was all like, "Oh, that sounds like a nice idea," to what Spencer was saying.
Right, like you can't even sarcastically say these things to people like Spencer, because if you do, it will get put into text, and then that will become a headline, and you will be demonized across every culture, everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say we should, we should have white people pay reparations to black people, and you run for freaking president, no one yes, a bunch of conservative commentators go, come on, no. But that's the end of it, right? Like, we didn't get up and burn something down. But if Richard Spencer got up and said the same thing about, black people paying white people, or going back to slavery, or getting their own country and getting the hell out of America, or any of these things, it would be like, where the hell's he at? Let's burn it down. Right?
Yeah.
So I think in that sense, the SJW portion is more dangerous, if only because we tolerate their crap in society.
Yep. You do have a fair point there as to how much painting a good picture as to how it's more people are more tolerant towards that. Trying to find a good way to segue this onto the next subject. What's your general opinion on Ethan Ralph?
I don't really have one.
Irrelevant.
No, Ethan Ralph is definitely more relevant than me. I mean, it would seem ridiculous to call him irrelevant, though I guess to be fair, so is Spencer. But
yeah, they have more internet influence at least.
Very true. And look, Ethan Ralph puts on a show that seems to entertain lots of people and says all kinds of crazy shit, but there's a reason I don't watch Drama Alert either, and it's not because I hate Keemstar. I just don't give a shit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my opinions on Ralph are slim. I think he is the last vestige of internet blood sports. The
last vestige. Not even Andy Worski is applicable to that.
I think he's pretty well given up anything that at least used to look like internet blood sports. I mean, he's hating the hell out of Ian Miles Chong right now, but it's not just pull Ian on a stream and scream at each other for 2.5 hours. So,
well, then again, everybody seems to be hating on Ian Miles Chung, but
it comes and goes.
Yeah, I mean, all these individuals that the skeptic community focuses on, they come and they go.
They do, and look, that unto itself, I think, is a problem. Is for all of this idea that the skeptic community and everybody else is talking about ideas. First, no, they aren't. Right? They're talking about people. Those people may embody some ideas, and occasionally they go, these ideas are bad, but that's pretty much the it of it, right? When it comes to promoting or defending their own ideas, weak titty would be generous. So I'm sure I will get hate for having said that for 1,000,000 years, but it's still true.
Well, it's not. I think I get what you're getting at, because it's not like with every single response video that a Skepcom member makes in response to somebody that it's a response to an actual political idea that that person they're responding to is saying. I mean, sometimes, a lot of the time, it'll be like something drama related. Like, for example, freaking Sargon making a video, devoting an entire, like, what, 1.5 hour long live stream bitching about Mr. Medicare,
Yeah.
calling him a child groomer.
Right.
That, I mean, what's the freaking political idea here that's being responded to? Whereas, for example, if you have, like, say, My 2 Cents, for example, making a response video to the Progressive Voice on single-payer healthcare, he's not only making a response video to Progressive Voice, but also a response video to the idea of single-payer healthcare.
Again, relevant, but now we're again at the point of talking about everybody's ideas are bad, right? And don't get me wrong, in a sense, there's almost no way to make a response to single payer without going like, this is why free markets are better. But even still, you know, there, I don't know. I've come to have this problem recently where watching people defend their own ideas has gotten almost physically painful. So. Not because I think their ideas are wrong, even necessarily, but just because watching people defend their own ideas is bad. So, and it's mostly because, don't get me wrong, we all have lots of practice after many years of watching other people do it, going, that is garbage, right?
What do you mean, people defending their own ideas?
So, name one video where somebody came out and said, this is an idea, it's a good idea, I'm not going to juxtapose it with anything, this is a good idea and why, and it wasn't A, cringy, B, poorly received, or C, completely ignored.
Okay, so you're not talking about just the mere espousal, or you're not talking about like the original video where somebody's just merely espousing their ideas. You're talking about the response to that guy's original video.
No. Original video, right? This is my idea. This is why it's a good idea.
What you think? In your opinion, those are cringy?
No, but look, they are one of those three things, right? They're poorly done, and the cringe generally comes from when they start like waffling about their own idea. Like, well, like, I mean, I like free markets, but you need some regulation, and yeah, I mean, obviously, we'll have to forego everything I just said, but I do like the idea, right? You know, and it's just the way that it goes. And look, there are a few people that this does not apply to. I would suggest that as much as I don't particularly like the way that he does it, Dapperton spent a long time running around going, this is why everyone should be an ANCAP, right? And
right.
I think he doesn't do it very well, but that's my opinion. And hey, the guy's, you know, what, 100 times the size of me, so maybe I'm just wrong. You know?
Yeah.
But anyway, we were talking about Ralph. I think
so, rewinding back to him. You don't really care. I understand that, and overall, I guess I don't really care. But there was kind of
Ralph is the Jersey Shore of YouTube.
Okay.
The Big Brother. I mean that's what it is, right? And I didn't care about any of them either. So. Nothing against Ralph, by the way, on that sense. You're selling a product and you're selling it well. Make your money. But I'm not going to care about it.
I see. I mean, what do you think of, like, everybody, like, not even just the one person that I kind of implied earlier that you don't like, but other people as well have, like, exposed us to how he basically is apathetic and even outright allows doxing on his own platforms, like the live chats of his streams, his Discord server, and so on and so forth. Do you think? I mean, what do you think of all those claims?
I have no idea. I have become eminently skeptical of everything to do with this because every time I turn around, everyone is doxing everyone, and then there's not actually doxes, and on it goes. And to the discussion that you and I had about said individual, I mean, your response was good. And what I provided afterwards, I don't think is the usual response to, so where is all of this doxing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, look, I mean, if Ralph is doxing people and or supporting them, stop doing that. I mean, just don't. You're a piece of shit for facilitating doxing, but I don't know, and so I won't say.
I mean,
that you definitively are. Just
I'm not
presuming the accusations are true. That's all true.
right. I mean, I have yet to actually read the article from the person that I was talking about earlier. I've yet to actually read the article that was provided by him that was from the Washington Post, where supposedly Ralph himself actually doxed Brianna Wu. But I'm not even talking about whether or not he himself has doxed anybody. I'm just talking about like him just basically being flagrant about it. I mean, I do not outright advocate for him to be taken down off of the internet because of that. I mean, that would be just a guilt by association, but because of how he's careless about it, it kind of makes me not care so much if he does get taken down. Whereas, for example,
I would argue that he should not be taken off the internet, because I am generally speaking against that. I just don't argue that the government should stop it. But look, the premise that we're going to solve doxing in that fashion, or even Ralph doing it, look, there will always be another service. There will always be another something. If Ralph's product sells, and some part of why it sells is because they run around and dox people, then the worst case scenario for them is that they move to 4chan, right? Or that Ralph starts a streaming service that he posts exclusively to 4chan and then still has his audience. I mean, this idea that you can silence people by, getting them off of YouTube or whatever is continuously proven wrong. So,
although I would say that someone, for example, like AIU, who is shown repeatedly he himself to dox people, does deserve to be have some kind of punishment.
Well,
I think at least.
I very much dislike that man. So, not that I've ever had any interaction with him, but I can't even make it through a video of his. I occasionally get forwarded one. They're like, "You need to see this," and I'm like, "No, I simply cannot deal with Devin. No."
I guess it's just because of the way that he speaks. He's so much of an insufferable asshole.
He is the ultimate in keyboard warriors. Well, you need to fly to Germany, and then I'll give you my address, and you can come to my front door, and I'll beat your ass. Yeah, because we're doing that. Shut up, you pussy.
Oh yeah. Okay, so I think done with those two, like Ethan, Ralph, and doxing, pretty much. And honestly, that was kind of a more boring conversation compared to talking about alt-right and alt-right versus SJWs and like certain agendas and medias and whatnot. I guess Ethan Ralph pretty much is a done deal. Like,
well, look, I mean, if he doxed me, I'd be pissed, but I got nothing here. I simply don't care most of the time. Like, just, I can't make myself.
So, moving on from that almost irrelevant issue, birthright citizenship.
Birthright citizenship. Whoo, buddy.
I'm going to try to go back and find the article that I was reading at one point, because I had read this one article from National Review talking about birthright citizenship and how it is invalid, basically, or something along those lines. And just the article itself is not really making the case for me of the raw text of the, I can't remember exactly which
14th
amendment.
Amendment you're looking for.
The 14th Amendment. Okay. So I could not see the actual case being made very well, at least by National Review, of how the 14th Amendment yeah, it does not allow essentially birthright citizenship, what we call birthright citizenship anyway. So I was wondering of what you think of this whole issue.
So birthright citizenship is suddenly again a political problem. Look, if you can in any way suggest that what the 14th Amendment says is that illegal immigrants won't be illegal if they were born on U.S. soil, I mean, go ahead and show me where it says that, right? And that's the argument that everybody's having, right? Because Trump said, well, I mean, they're not citizens, and we could probably, with an executive order, just decide that they're not citizens. And all of that comes down to us deciding in the 90s, I want to say, that if you were born on American soil, you're a citizen. And it was an argument of, well, it always should have been this way. Except that if you go back to the Congress and you read the congressional notes at the time, what they say is, well, clearly that won't be true. So, I mean, okay, if we want to go back and revise history, then sure. And equally speaking, you come to a problem of the 14th Amendment says, if you're subject to the laws of the country or something right along those lines, then you're a citizen. And, well, if I need to call your country's government to deport you, then you're not really subject to my jurisdiction, are you? And so, look, it would be nice if we could all for a moment go, the 14th Amendment was put in place because we had slaves here who weren't citizens, and then we said they were, and that's what it was for. The end. As the entire Congress seemed to believe would be the case at the time. But modern day politics is modern day politics, so now it means whatever the hell we want it to mean. Much like, for example, the Second Amendment or the First, or I can't wait till the Third means whatever we want it to. The world's going to crap themselves on a regular basis.
What the Third means?
No troops will be quartered in people's homes.
Okay. Take it to the extent of meaning something like you cannot have your family member living with you who happens to be a soldier cannot be living with you or something.
Oh no,
some cockamamie.
Take it the other way. Logic. Well, they said I couldn't station them in your home, but you have a garage.
Or hey, you do have a barn,
right?
You have a barn on your land.
Hey, there's a shed in the backyard. We'll put them in there, right? And look, if we were treating the Third Amendment the way we treat the Second, that's exactly what we'd be doing. And we're just kind of going a different direction with it with the 14th. So look, I get that everybody wants the Constitution to contain whatever it is their current feelings on the subject are, but it doesn't, right? And so, sorry, I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, I really do get the possibility and the arguments that the 14th Amendment was not originally intended for children of illegal immigrants born in the United States, but really it was meant for African slaves who weren't officially citizens of the United States. They're trying to make an amendment just to blanketly and swiftly accept them as citizens. But I don't know if I am not really convinced that the original intent of the people that framed the 14th Amendment really overrules what the raw text of the 14th Amendment says, which is all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside, yada, yada, yada. So it says all persons born. I mean, let me get something straight.
Yeah, all persons born and. The next part matters.
No, it says all persons born or naturalized.
And
subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
So if you fall into one of these two categories and this third one applies to you, then you're a citizen. Now, look, the third one doesn't apply if you're an illegal immigrant.
I think you might have just lit a bit of a spark in my head, Don. Pointing that out. And subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So officially, officially, it is not our jurisdiction to say what a non-citizen, what is to be done with a non-citizen. But I would say
all their country to send them back. I mean,
yeah,
you know.
I mean, to a minuscule extent, though, they kind of are under our jurisdiction, in that we have to like round them up, and then we put them in jail, and there's the due process and trial and whatnot to determine whether or not they actually should be deported. But
sure, but they aren't
beyond that, though, they aren't really under our jurisdiction. I can understand that.
And this is the argument that's playing out. And don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that if this ever gets to SCOTUS, they will agree with me, because there's a good chance they won't. On the other hand, SCOTUS makes a lot of rulings that I think are ridiculous. So, I got to live with them anyway. That said, if the original intent of the amendment was going to be, look, if you are born on American soil, even as an illegal immigrant, then you're a citizen, then why did we need to change the policy 30 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if the policy was by default X after the amendment was passed, it could not have intentionally meant Y. That's,
And you go mentioning the third part of the 14th Amendment right there. Makes me wonder as to how National Review was not as simply as that, focusing on that part. I mean, all it took is for you to point out "and" under the jurisdiction. And hey, they aren't officially under our jurisdiction. So, yeah.
Right.
But National Review did not do that. Like, they were just meandering on the point. Damn it.
What were they getting at here?
So
concentrating on what they were talking about when they actually argued the amendment. And look, to some degree or another, effectively that has to be relevant, right? I mean, it's the same thing that everybody's doing when they say, well, go read the Federalist Papers. I mean, effectively what they're saying is go read the Federalist Papers of the 14th Amendment.
Right. I gotcha. I mean, it is relevant, but then, the leftist gun grabbers, they want to then like play the mental gymnastics of, oh, the founding fathers never intended for people to own an AR-15 or any full auto rifle or anything like that. But then
a completely nonsensical claim, but
yeah,
I mean, they make it. I don't know.
And I also want to like address here, like your fans be watching back on this stream and be thinking, oh, Dark Khan is for birthright citizenship. What a cuck. Just like how Imafed, I mean, Imafed is Nope, isn't he?
Yeah. Nope's an aggressive dude. And I wouldn't have Nope any other way.
But basically, like kind of in the same way that Imafed was insisting that I am for an Internet Bill of Rights, even though I specifically said no, I never said that.
Well,
but I want to just clarify. I am not for birthright citizenship. I was never really for birthright citizenship, although it kind of is a bit of a moral quandary for me. Like, say, for example, a kid was born in the United States. Sure. I definitely believe that the parents, the ones who actually actively committed the crime of jumping the border or overstaying a visa, that they definitely should be punished for their own crime. But should the kid be punished for their crime? And I say that if they are still under 18 and living under the jurisdiction of their own parents, then yeah, we should deport them with their parents. Otherwise, we'll end up having a freaking orphan living on the street with no parents while their parents are being deported back down to Mexico. But say if that kid was born in the United States by illegally immigrated parents and they become like a full-grown adult and they're no longer under the jurisdiction of their parents, I mean, jumping the border or the crime wasn't of their own fault. It wasn't committed by them. I mean, that's kind of where I play the more sympathetic route and think, yeah, you're an adult. It wasn't your fault that the law was broken. So I say amnesty to you. I mean, what do you think of that right there?
If I
That's
rob a
one
bank,
of that's one of the exceptions I make on amnesty. But sorry, go on.
if I rob a bank and I never get caught, and I grow old and die and leave all of this money to my kids, and for whatever reason, the government looks through my estate, probably for various weapons that I will own by that point, right? Because they'll probably go get my tax stamps as soon as I move out of this communist hellhole, and go get myself some NFA weapons. And so they're going to care. And when they open up my estate, they find, I don't know, something that proves to them that I stole $100 million from this bank, and I leave it all to my kids. Do the kids get the money?
That is another quandary as well. I mean, originally it was possessed by, say, you said the bank, or even let's not apply this to a bank. Let's apply it to like, say, somebody who just got straight up robbed.
Sure. I
Just
steal
a
the Hope
individual.
Diamond, right?
What?
And I steal the Hope Diamond and I sell it, and I grow old and die and never get caught. And I leave all this money to my kids, and somehow or another, there's proof that I stole the Hope Diamond and it's found by the government. Do they get to keep the money?
I mean, I will answer right now on the surface, no, but it would be something that I have to like think about further because I do not know if it's quite equivalent to the case of
let's reach in
birthright citizenship.
Reach in a little deeper.
The scenario that I brought up.
Let's reach in a little deeper. I bought them a house, cash, right? It's theirs. It's paid off. They only owe taxes forever, but I bought it with this stolen money. Do they get to keep the house?
Do they get to keep the house? Or actually, I mean, this is a weird scenario that I'm going to bring up, but I would say yes, but this is, oh god. At the same time, if like the person who bought the house for the kids was already died, how else are they going to get back that money? The person who was stolen from. Perhaps the government would make recompense or something like that, but I don't know.
Oh, so now we're going to put it on to everybody?
That kind of gives like a, it kind of brings up a reparations type of argument.
This is the argument going on one way or another with whether or not you grew up as an illegal immigrant and you never knew it, and you show up to get your driver's license or something, and they go, "You're not a citizen," and you go, "I'm a what?" Right? I mean, look, this kid didn't do anything wrong. My kid presumably wouldn't have done anything wrong for taking a house from his parents. I mean, that's not a crime, right? And presuming again, this illegal immigrant, now adult, didn't, you know, they're not a felon or something. I mean, do you get to keep the fruits of the crime for which you have now profited? And that is the question at hand, the actual judicial question at hand. Now, whether or not we feel good or bad about it, that is the judicial question at hand.
Well, okay, there are two different things I want to bring up, but okay. First off is the thing, this kind of connects to the issue of like the Native Americans. A person can argue that, hey, the Native Americans' land was stolen, but you are inheriting the fruits of so long ago people's crime. Therefore, your land should be, well, would the argument in response to that be the original possessors of that land are also dead, as well as the original thieves? Or what?
I mean, it could be, but, and I hate to break this to you, and this is just a reality. Effectively, nothing is a crime when the government does it. Sorry. I mean, and if you don't think so, then, you know, every single time a cop tracks down someone and shoots them, right? Then that's it, right? Well, did you know that person? No. But You know, he was running, and I knew he was a murderer, and all of these things that we have granted cops. You know, I can't let a serial killer go. I have to shoot him. Well, did you know him? Could you prove that? Because if it was a citizen, it would still be a crime, right? And
Mhm.
look, it's not a crime when the government does it. You don't have to like that, but that is reality. And
Yeah, I mean,
that stays reality until enough other governments go, we don't like what that government is doing. And then they declare war.
obviously, what is a crime is kind of subject to, or, well, not. It's kind of subject to what is actually considered a crime. But let's like stick this strictly to morals, the moral question.
Sure. Would I morally approve of the idea of driving people off of their land and taking it? No, but you know, I mean, it was how we did everything, say about 500 years ago, right? And you don't have to like that, but those peaceful savages did the same damn thing. It was the method of political problem solving at the time. Also, Daniel Gomez has his own particular point over there too.
You can trace back that someone is illegal immigrant. It is simple. If you can't trace back, you don't have a case. Which I guess that is like the argument regarding sifting way back through history with the, red people versus white people. White people stole land from red people type of scenario. Is that you cannot trace back exactly who possessed what, and therefore you have to give the exact land to the inheritors of the people who were stolen from. You know what I'm getting at. I do not know if that actually made any sense. But
Yeah, no, you can't do this group justice thing in retrospect, right? It's the same thing with, well, if we were going to pay slaves reparations, we should have done it in 1865, right? Or 67, I guess. And
okay,
after that, well, no, stop it. It's over, right?
especially with if that generation of slaves is dead, their sons and daughters, yeah, not so much.
Well, the vast majority of them are too, right? Understand how far back we're talking. Was 140-ish years now. Their direct children are almost certainly dead unless they were children at the time that they were released from being slaves, and they lived to a terribly old age, and then their children also lived to a terribly old age. But keep in mind, our World War II veterans are dying at a regular rate right now, right? The whole generation is dying off right now.
And now it's pretty much, I mean, it was for the longest time that World War II vets were the oldest generation of vets in America, but pretty soon it'll catch up to where Vietnam vets are the oldest generation of vets in the country.
I don't know how soon. I mean, we still got Korea to go through, so.
Well, right. I mean, but Korea
is about Korea, if I'm honest.
Korea is not that far off from World War II, so.
Yeah. In fact, you had a lot of crossover vets between the two. But that said, look, again, it is whether you like it or not, starting about, say, 1779, you have the U.S. government here. And now the U.S. government controls this land.
The FBI in the chat says, did someone say crime? I heard someone say stolen too. Just thought that was funny. 1 second.
Ruh-roh. Well, hey, Chad, how are we all doing? We enjoying ourselves over there? I have no idea how long he's going to be gone. So I'm just going to sit here and run my mouth for a while. At least presuming that, the delay catches up to you all and stuff. So this isn't just dead air. That said, I sound like hell, so I'm sure this is going to be great. I want sugar. I don't even blame you. I mean, at this point, it seems pretty reasonable. Anything to make me stop sounding like this would be great. And maybe that'd do. This is good. I'm glad we're doing fine, or at least for those that are answering appropriately. We skip over anything that you might care about there, chat?
All right. Sorry about that. It was my sister coming in
Mm.
with about a couple of things.
Well, that'll happen.
But yeah, so anyway, now my camera is more choppy than it was before I turned it off. Oh,
Give it a second. It's filling a buffer. It'll be fine.
But what was I gonna say? There was a kind of another point that I wanted to make. I mean, not that I am necessarily disagreeing with you or outright disagreeing with you on your points when it comes to birthright citizenship,
Sure.
but I must point this out in all intellectual honesty, is that of to why that the whole thing about stolen money then being given down to like the next generation after the thief is died. Like, what do we do with that money that was stolen by the past thief? How that is not necessarily equivalent to how whether or not we deport this person who is the son of illegal immigrants was born in the U.S. The way I say that they are not necessarily equivalent is because money is physically possessible and therefore is actually stealable, if that's a word. Actually stolen from an original owner. Whereas a citizenship, yeah, you can like point out all the jobs and whatnot, but it's not like the
I don't care. They can have jobs. Of the various concerns people have, jobs is not one of them for me personally. I think they're a great example of why we should get rid of minimum wage immediately.
right.
That said,
yeah, I don't think they're
the problem. The problem is, and forever will be, that we have a welfare state. We would not care about immigration if we didn't have a welfare state. So as long as there's a welfare state, they are receiving funds. They are receiving money. As long as the government is running any substantial portion of our lives, and they are receiving these monies.
But they aren't receiving welfare. No, I can like I have at least two sources I can go to on that.
So the argument there is that illegal immigrants are not federally permitted to receive welfare, but they are permitted to receive it at the state level in a wide variety of states, not the least of which is California, my favorite state to hate on. But by far more importantly, to that child that we have then determined is a citizen because they were born on U.S. soil, or to naturalize them immediately, they now immediately receive all of those benefits.
They receive welfare money that was, well, stolen that could have possibly gone to an actual citizen.
Well, even if it didn't, we just wouldn't be paying for it, right?
And by the way, people, we aren't making the argument that welfare should exist. We're just saying it does exist. So arguably the actual naturalized citizen has a little bit more stake on that welfare than an illegal immigrant is.
Well, so to the point of birthright citizenship, right? If I bring my kids over to this country from, for example, Mexico.
No. The scenario that I was bringing up was if your kid is born in the country after you've illegally immigrated, not if you bring your kids and they were already born in Mexico, for example.
I bring my wife and I walk her across the border and she's, I don't know, not even pregnant, but then I knock her up while we're here and I go, that's a U.S. citizen, right? Parents can't receive welfare, but that kid can. Now, for anyone unfamiliar with the welfare system, this is how the welfare system works. Parents don't receive anything. The kid receives it. We just cut the check to the parents. And that's how we rationalize the entire welfare system. So, yes, illegal immigrants receive welfare in any sense that's not just some mental gymnastic.
I will point out in that scenario right there that the illegal immigrant, that you as an illegal immigrant would be receiving welfare through child tax credits.
Exactly.
You just have to get a false, you just have to get a fake social security number or stolen social security number or something.
So you don't even need to do any of that, right? I mean, you can receive the actual temporary assistance for needy families kind of welfare because
that's at least one method. That's at least one method that I read they could do it.
And there are lots of ways, right? I mean, there's boatloads of things that have happened over time that, you know, have proven out that this massive welfare state that we have does in fact pay out to illegal immigrants. It's just but there's a law that says they can't is what you get as an answer, and it's ridiculous because there's a law that says you can't kill people, and yet people still get killed.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it is. And it turns out, by the way, self-defense is even an argument in some of those cases. And that would seem like there could still be a law that says you can't kill people and a way that you could do it legally, you know? But that's too much of a pain to be talking about or something, so just don't. Which is ridiculous, but is basically where all of this debate comes down all of the time. So look to whether or not if the kid was an illegal immigrant because they weren't born here, or their parents never went down to a Social Security office and said this kid was born here, do they then just become citizens at age 18? I think the answer there is equally no, for all of the same reasons, right? Well, you presumably already went through the school system, which means we already paid something for you. So how about we call it even now and you go home? Or I'll tell you what, reimburse us for every dollar that worth of education you got along the way. And then once the balance is at least zero, we can talk. But until then, go away.
All right. I will definitely say on all this that you have kind of somewhat weaved my mind a little bit more towards the right when it comes to birthright citizenship, or maybe I wasn't actually being center left when it came to birthright citizenship. I was just more or less given the benefit of the doubt on that matter more than anything else. But
there's nothing wrong with giving the benefit of the doubt. I mean, look, it's a good place to start. On the other
way to get onto other subjects. But anyway, go on.
On the other hand, this is a complaint I make all the time, and don't take it personally because I never mean it as a personal attack. It's amazing the shit that people don't know, right? I mean, for example,
I know that I am ignorant. I'm not that well read, in all honesty.
Everybody is, and yet it's when I say it's amazing the things that people don't know, I don't mean like, why don't you have a PhD in every subject that's ever been discussed, but more. We have somehow managed to have a national conversation about whether or not the 14th Amendment grants birthright citizenship with a very small minority of people going, the word "and" is right there. It's right there. What does it say on the other side? Somehow or another,
and
this can be a common conversation, and the next 5 words in this sentence we are debating don't come up.
All right. I'm going to have to what was I going to say? I'm going to have to make a live stream highlights of you basically making that point, pointing out that one caveat in the amendment saying, and under the jurisdiction of the United States.
No worries, man. I think we have a video on it somewhere, but what are you going to do? Apparently chat would like to know whether or not we think it would be a good idea to have kings.
Oh. Just musing. Do you think you're okay? So Lord Pterodax asks both of us. Just musing. Do you think a hereditary president would incentivize elected component of government to greater uphold the system of checks and balances in the U.S. Constitution? It's not really. I don't really think so because in a couple decades time, the president, supposedly, which is basically just a king at this point, would get super filthy rich from his royal salary. His kids would get rich, and they would be able to buy out a few dozen of the politicians working in the elected component of the government and buy them out to their favor,
You make an assumption that everyone can be bought and sold. I mean, how much money would it take for me to pay you to overturn the Second Amendment?
I would not sell my soul for it.
If the problem here is that people can be bought and sold, then
let me put it this way: I would not let you. I would not do it if you sold me your soul. Let me
Right.
put it that way.
I get what you're getting at. There's no amount of money that I could give you that would make it viable for you to go, yes, let's vote to overturn the Second Amendment. And yet, the argument that we all run on with this politicians can be bought and sold, because the king POTUS for life, family POTUS thing, right, would be able to buy politicians is that presumably everyone, at least who gets into government, can just be bought and sold. And so don't worry about it. They can just do whatever they want. And no individual ever seems to be able to stand up to this test. But if we leave it as some sort of abstract, then it always is, right? And it's the same thing that happens with right-wing politicians in the NRA. And of all of my problems with the man, Rubio explained this pretty well. The NRA didn't support me, or the NRA didn't give me money so I would support their policies. They gave me money because I do support their policies. I already was pro-gun, and they went, "Hey, we like that.
Right.
Here's money." But if you don't bother to check the timing there, it's, well, they're owned by the NRA. Right.
There was even a CBS News article that I had read at one point in my news series called Strike Force of how they were making that point, that a good portion of these Republicans, well, actually pretty much all of them, were already pro-gun, but they received the money after they had espoused what their principles are.
And so I have difficulty believing people can be bought and sold that easily. Is there some example somewhere of someone who can be bought and sold that easily? I'm sure, right? Someone who doesn't care about anything but power. Hillary Clinton. Jokes aside, though. Well, maybe not. I mean, the Clinton Foundation thing is pretty terrible. But still, are there people like that? Yes. Is that suddenly going to be the problem where there's no other incentive involved here? I don't think so, right? Because even if that was the case, presuming you left the rest of the government the same, except you had a king instead of a president, and it was based on lineage, everyone else would still be voted in and out of power.
Mm-hmm.
So if they went, we're going to suddenly decide to repeal, I don't know, the First Amendment of the Constitution because the king said he doesn't like it and he paid us a lot of money. Can you even imagine how many special elections there'd be the next day? Like 99? I mean, people who weren't even involved in it would get caught up in the special elections.
Oh, boy. That'd be a major political shitstorm right there.
Right. So I don't think it causes that problem. On the other hand, I don't think it incentivizes the idea that you would not that you would keep a separation of powers very well, because you would just, whatever it is that the family already agreed with would work with them directly and be willing to give that family power more than they otherwise would. And so as soon as, so if it was Democrats and Republicans and the king or the family of was traditionally Democrats forever or traditionally Republicans forever, either of those parties is going to be like, well, yeah, we'll happily give more power to the executive. Just do whatever the hell it is that we already want you to do. So, no. And the moment that they're in power enough that they can't, they can't be filibustered, for example, that's it, right? All the power goes to the executive, and you never get it back.
So I kind of want to change subjects here a little bit before we go off air, because I do want to wrap up this stream here soon enough.
Sure, man.
But on the issue of abortion, because that was kind of one of the beefs that, or not, I would not say beef. That's me being exaggerative. Never mind that. But that was one of the things that was brought up by Nope regarding my live stream with who was about abortion, and I guess primarily talking about the legislation brought up in Virginia and New York.
Sure.
About how it was brought up by my opponent that my opponent, I sound like I'm in the middle of an election or something.
Right.
How it was brought up by my debate opponent of how there would be so minuscule and so specific of cases of where that people would actually get late-term abortions in Virginia and New York or something like that.
That's a ridiculous assessment, but I mean, okay, carry on.
Also, one of the points that was brought up by Nope um, was talking about. I can't remember exactly what he said about late-term abortions. It almost says
Before we break on to another point, let me say more than that. Just that's ridiculous. So in 1950, abortions were fairly limited and rare things, right? Mostly,
all right.
because they were illegal. Once they became legal, they became more prolific. It's basically like anything you legalize. When it is illegal, there are still some people who will do it. However, when it becomes legal, people who otherwise wouldn't, because they were disincentivized by the law, will begin to do it. Now, the argument going on around New York and Virginia is that both of them said, well, but you have to have a doctor who, says that that's okay. And sometimes you even have to have two. Well, look, how many doctors have we seen over the course of the abortion debate since 1967 or 72 or whenever the hell Roe v. Wade happened, that have gone on TV and said women should be able to have unrestricted abortions until the time that child is born, no matter what, and anything, including them suddenly deciding they want one, is perfectly good reason. And one of the things that was specifically discussed under the Virginia bill was if the mental health of the mother is a problem, which at any time remotely close to birth is effectively going to come down to, is this going to cause you some sort of mental health issue?
Like
anything
just
longer
mere,
and that kid's going to get born, right?
Like just mere PTSD, for example. Like if something as I don't want to say minute, but I will say I actually will use that word. Something even as low as that, they could go for an abortion.
How about depression? How about anything? How about
depression? Yeah, that's another mental health.
By the way, having had a kid, you're pretty anxious, right? When that kid's born, you're pretty anxious. That is anxiety. It's a mental disorder, right?
So, excuse me, miss. So we think that if you carrying on with this pregnancy, it'll give you severe anxiety that is affecting your mental health. So therefore,
far, right? So if she decides at the last minute, you know what, I don't want a kid after all, I'm really too anxious about this. This is really an anxiety problem. That's it. She is now legally permitted to have an abortion in both New York and Virginia, right? So,
I mean, that was kind of the question that was coming up with me. I mean, my debate opponent kept on bringing up that point that it's only in very specific stances, but then I kept on bringing up to him that I had read from Town Hall and I think it was CBS News that both bills, I mean, especially Virginia's, will allow you to have a late-term abortion if you have mental issues, although the bill in Virginia obviously didn't pass, but just if you have mental problems or mental risk or something as low as even PTSD, or like you just said now, even anxiety, you could go for abortion. I mean, that's still going to like inflate the numbers past just mere brain trauma or something like that.
Sure. And look, I mean, this always gets sold on the same line. I mean, but can we just stop lying about it? I mean, if you want to try to sell to the United States that if a woman suddenly decides she's pissed off about having a kid 5 minutes before she has it, you have a right to abort that baby, then just say that, right? And look, I don't think that's going to play, and I'm pretty sure that's why that's never what gets said. However, I mean, read the laws, man. That's what it says. I didn't write this shit.
I'll have to research up of what specifically New York. I mean, of course, just by saying this, it's enough of a case to make to say of how that the New York bill goes too far. But I think the
New York bill goes too far in another direction, which is to say, about a week after it passed, some guy punched his girlfriend in the stomach when she was pregnant and killed.
I watched your video on that,
and the cops went, well, we can only charge him with simple assault. I guess, to be fair, they got punched. Lady got punched in the gut before the bill went into effect, and then the prosecutor said, well, this isn't a crime anymore. We can't charge him with it. So no murder. It's simple assault. That's what you get. Because to do what they did, they had to repeal the part of the law as it was written that said you can't do that, right? And look, that was right-wing fear-mongering the day that bill passed. right up until the DA there went, it turns out they were right.
So, okay, so now that we have pretty much talked all this out, rewinding back to what I was trying to say about Nope. Nope was, I don't want to put words in my mouth, but if I remember correctly, he was almost making it out as if the only type of late-term abortions that happen is C-sections as to where the child will live once the procedure is fully done.
Well, that's a product of laws as they stand, right?
I mean, if that's the case, then that really would mean that the pro-life community would be over-exaggerative when it comes to, or overreacting when it comes to laws regarding late-term abortions.
How do you mean?
In other words, if the child still lives via C-section, then why is the pro-life community freaking out? I mean, assuming that what Nope said was true.
What he's getting at here is that the way that you perform late-term abortions is you perform all of the function of a C-section, and then you kill the kid before you pull it out.
Kill the kid before the C-section is fully done.
Right. Because you're still on the far side of the vagina, right? So it's still not a person. But you slice that gut open, go, we see you, click, you're dead. And then pull out now corpse and put it somewhere, right? And so that, and again, a lot of this is a product of how laws are written right now, as opposed to that you could just have a late-term abortion up to 40 weeks and don't worry about it, do whatever the hell you want. Presumably with some caveats about health of the woman or something. But look, you run into a problem once kids get so big that there's only two ways out of there. The normal way and then through the front, right? That's it. That's all there is. And so...
Right. I guess I should have researched more as to how a C-section abortion actually happens before I kind of asked you that question, because now it makes me feel like a dumbass.
Well, and here's the shtick, right? So you're presumably trying not to damage the woman at the time, and let's face it, without an actual live birth going, their bodies don't do the things that permit the heads of the infant to come out between their legs. So the only way to get that kid out of there without potentially killing this lady is to cut open the front and pull it out. Now, don't get me wrong. If what we do is say you can, I don't know, put a blender blade up there and turn that kid into Jello, then that'll stop happening. But I'm pretty sure that's going to be a hard sell to the American public, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't know if I'm supposed to be making dark jokes going that far. I mean, especially since there is more than just me in this apartment. But
I mean, you know, I'm in earphones, so.
So, what?
Don't worry about it. Carry
on. I will ask one final question before we actually wrap up. What is your own personal beliefs on abortion?
I am... Well, generally speaking, what I stand on is that I'm pro-abortion, because I think anyone that would get one has lost any moral argument to begin with, because the right won the moral argument about abortion infinity years ago, in my opinion. So, under the pretense that some people don't need to be breeding, keep getting them, and then whenever it is that we change the laws, I don't care. But
although that's kind of nihilistic.
Is the word, yeah.
Yeah, nihilistic and almost biased way of looking at it. I mean, you're essentially saying you Democrats should not be breeding. I mean, essentially, Democrats could be
that. They said that.
Democrats would be saying the same to Republicans. You Republicans should not be breeding.
And hey, they can say that all they want. I note that the Republicans aren't running around asking to kill their children.
Right.
What do you want me to do? Make no mistake. There's a lot to this, right? I mean, I have pontificated about this for many hours. The results of people having children that don't want them are terrible. And make no mistake, I am is equally for, how about this? You can have an abortion on demand, and then after that, you can't have kids anymore because we tie and burn something. That's it. You know, and look, I'm flexible on this. I absolutely think the right will win this argument without my help over the course of time. I think the left is proving that right now. And in the meantime, if that's what they want to do, then let them.
Mm-hmm. Well, this actually kind of reminds me back to a joke said by a guy called Vanguard, Eternal Vanguard. He said if the right had any brains, it would let the left abort their own. They would let abortions happen because typically it's the left that are having more abortions.
It's the same shtick, you know.
I told you that I can turn California red. That was the punchline. But in all seriousness, I mean, is that actually seriously your belief on abortion? Do you say let Democrats, well, essentially to put it quite simply and bluntly, let Democrats abort themselves?
Look, as long as it's legal and they're the ones doing it anyway. And look, again, the right won the moral argument, in my opinion. And in all reality, most of what my deal with this is I think somebody needs to speak on it honestly, and I don't think anybody does. I mean, look, you want to go abort kids at 40 weeks because shout your abortion? Okay, but understand that what you're saying is you want to go kill kids at 40 weeks so you can shout your abortion. Go, you do you.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree. I mean, yeah, I don't really want more Democrat voters or potential Democrat voters with kind of a negative moral compass on abortion so much that they would allow late terms or would want to allow late terms. But I still think, despite a person's own political beliefs, that they do deserve the right to life. Just or naturally.
I don't see how we got to where we are. Now, look, here's
I'm
what
fumbling over my own words.
Right? Roe versus Wade is wrong. It's a terrible ruling. Shouldn't exist. If you want abortion in the Constitution, make an amendment. That's it. The end. So, by all means, get rid of Roe v. Wade. That's going to push it back to the states, which is where it was anyway. And the vast majority of red states are going to go, no. And the vast majority of blue states are going to go, sure. Now, this unto itself poses us a million problems. Are we going to go down there and tell the blue states they can't do this? Well, are we going to go down to the red states and say no more death penalty? And I know, Dawn, it's an infant. It hasn't done anything wrong yet. That person killed someone, presumably, to get the death penalty. I get it. But if the argument is you can't kill people, then that applies, right? And I get it. Due process. There wasn't any for the kid. There was for the guy. Okay, cool. So there's a method by which the government can say you don't have a right to life any longer. As long as that is the case, that method is malleable politically. And by the way, I'm for the death penalty. So it's malleable. And as long as it's malleable, either A, if we don't like abortion, and I would vote for this amendment, abortion is illegal with some very fine caveats, right? Because again, I think it's the morally correct thing to do. However, we stand where we stand. And I don't have that much of a dog in this fight. And so I call it like I see it and don't care.
All right. Well, that's you, guy.
It's disheartening. We agreed on all the things up till now. Yeah, I get it. And don't get me wrong. Again, make no mistake. No small part of this for me is someone talking about it honestly. And to that point, there's a reason I keep saying the right has won the moral argument. Because they have. There's no argument there's no rational argument of any variety that says it's a bundle of cells at 8 weeks, but it's a human being at 25 weeks. There's no rational argument that says it's a bundle of cells 4 seconds before it's born, and it's a human being 4 seconds after.
For some reason, I cannot message my own live chat. This is stupid. But toxic threads, what I'm trying to say in the live chat is that we're actually about to close. But yeah, we were talking about abortion just right there. But yeah, so anyway, Don of Two Plebs Talk News. You want to say anything in closing?
I don't think so. I don't think anything spectacular topic-wise. But hey, man, thanks for having me on. Don't get too disheartened. Once again, the pro-life side's going to win this. And I'm not going to stop them. And I'll vote for you. But in the meantime, speak honestly about abortion, which isn't going to happen. So,
all right.
That said, thanks for having me on, man. As per usual, it's generally been a pretty good time. I'm Don of Two Plebs Talk News. I generally have a co-host named Peter. We run 3 shows a week. The Friday show is about how California is terrible and seemingly the most enjoyable show for everyone. Also, generally funny. We run a 2-hour live stream on Sundays covering anything we didn't go over during the week. Feel free to drop by, do the subscribing thing and all that kind of good stuff. And thanks for having me on once again.
All right. So, yes, again, Don, thanks for coming on. It was a fun conversation. I will say, in my opinion, you've definitely enlightened me on the issue of birthright citizenship. I say again, but for all of you who have watched, which was a smaller audience than I originally had thought or predicted, but I mean, especially in comparison to the last time that I had Don of Two Plebs on. But for all of you who did watch, all of you who will watch, thank you for viewing this. And it's been a fun conversation again. So, yeah, I guess that's it. See you all later. God bless. This has been Strike Force. Good night, y'all.